Hi, my name is Father Devereaux King. I'm the newly ordained priest for the Archdiocese of Nassau. And I just want to give you a little bit about myself and where I'm coming from. Of course, who doesn't want to know about the newest cleric in town, where he's from, and what he's all about? So I was born here in Nassau at Princess Margaret Hospital, January 15th, 1993. But I wasn't raised in Nassau. I was actually raised on Cat Island in Wilson Bay for most of my childhood until I was 11. And most of my time there was filled with crabbing and fishing, swimming, as we call it, like rambling through the bush. I remember the days of going to like Rake and Scrape Festival. My dad is a farmer, so I would help out in the farm, and those were really good days too. And during my time, like my faith, introduction to the Roman Catholic faith, and when I can really remember, was in Holy Redeemer in New by Cat Island, where I first learned how to altar serve. And Sister Eileen Kelly was the sister down there at the time and the administrator, and she was the first person that sort of introduced me to the faith and got me into the altar serving ministry. And my mom at the time was also my first communion teacher, so of course she had, I think, the biggest role in bringing me to the faith and helped me to understand what it means to have a life with Jesus Christ. Back in 2004, when I was 11, my parents had to make a really hard decision to separate our family so I can get a better education. And in 2006, I moved to Nassau, and 2005, I moved to Nassau. 2004, and it was rough, you know, having to move from Cat Island. That was pretty much all I knew about. I would come to Nassau for the summers, but actually moving to Nassau was something that was totally different. And I went to academia for about 2 years to help me sort of catch up in math and English. I was really behind. And then after 2 years, I went to Aquinas College. And during that time, of course, we had to find a new home parish. And my home parish was St. Thomas More. And I continued to get into altar service ministry. And I've been there since that time. I moved there. And my pastor at the time, who was Father Glenn, he came up to me and he said, you know, you'd make a good priest. And I was like, oh, that's nice. I just think people just say that for saying's sake, but I never really thought about it. And that was the first time, you know, someone actually came to me and I remembered, you know, someone saying, you know, you ever thought about being a priest? And I never for one moment even thought about it or wanted to think about it. I was like, okay, I guess that's just something you say to young men who's serving. But once I graduated from what was done with academia, I went to Aquinas, and there I met Father Clark, and he was a school chaplain at the time, and he's known me since I was 13, because that's when I went to Aquinas. And I didn't know him that well, but he knew of me, and I would serve with him every school mass he went to. He came to at Aquinas, and that was pretty much it. But a lot of the persons who even looked at me and said, you know, have you ever thought about the priesthood? Well, a lot of my teachers at Aquinas, they always would come up to me and say, you know, Devereaux, you ever thought about being a priest? Like, it seems like you have the aptitude for it. And I was like, nah, well, I don't know. I really wanted to be a chef at the time. And I got into culinary arts. I started looking at this career in like the 9th grade, and I took up food nutrition, and I was really apt on being a chef. I would watch my dad cook all the time. He was a great cook, and I think I got most of my cooking skills from him. I can actually cook, yes. And what was like so fun about it was like it was just something different. I'll even like bake with my mom. She's a really good baker. So we'd bake cookies and stuff, especially during Christmas, and cakes and all of that. So I always enjoyed doing that. And so once I graduated from Aquinas, I went to COB, now University of the Bahamas, and I got my associates in culinary arts. But it was also during that time, I went through a pretty rough period of not knowing what I really wanted to do. Even though persons told me I really wanted to be a priest, I still felt that call, you know, like deep inside of me. And I sort of didn't pay any attention to it. I just kind of covered it up. But what a strange thing happened back in February of 2013. Father Clark was made my pastor. My school chaplain came to my home parish. And I was super excited because I knew him. And I know he was a really awesome priest. But it was an opportunity for me to know him even more. And I remembered, wrestling with the call a lot. Some of the prayers I would have is like, Lord, a lot of people are telling me, seeing something inside of me, I guess I don't see for myself, saying, you make a good priest. And I just would ignore it because I feel as if, okay, that's what you see. I don't see that. But then at the same time, there was this huge tug in my heart, sort of curiosity. And I said this prayer, and I said, Lord, if you could send a priest that could show me that this life is actually, worth living, and it could be lived joyfully and happily, I may consider it. I'll give it a shot. And that's when Father Clark came in February of 2013. And I remember going to him for confession for the first time. And I was so afraid because I haven't been to confession in a while. And I remember just trying to breathe, and I confessed, and he said, "That's it?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I was just waiting for him to come down on me or ask more questions, like, "How could you do that?" And this thing. And he's like, "Nope." He was awesome, and I pretty much hit it off with him from that day. And I opened up about him, about being curious about the priesthood, feeling like there's a call inside of me to actually venture into this life and see if it was worth me going into. And what I found amazing about it was he never egged me on or try and rush me and say, no, you should look at it, you should go. Like, no, he was like, if this is for you, this is for you. But take your time, you're studying culinary at this point, so, do that. And when you're done, you can look into other things. Well, I was deep into the culinary arts field, and even though I still have a really good relationship with Father Clark at the time, I pretty much thought like priesthood was off the table. I was dating. I was just living the life as an average 20-year-old at the time, or trying to. And I just thought, well, priesthood, I don't know. And I was getting ready to, go to Johnson Wales University. I got accepted. I got a full scholarship. It was awesome, and getting ready to study like baking and pastry because I found a real interest in doing that. And after I graduated and I started working, trying to get a taste for the field, I realized I wasn't as happy as I thought I would be. And during the time once I graduated, Father Clark was also moved from St. Thomas More, and he got sent to St. Anselm's, where he is now as pastor. And I was a little bit sad that he was gone. I mean, he wasn't off of the island completely, but I was like, dang, my home pastor's, gone to another assignment. But I remember when he left, and I just was continuing culinary arts. I remember one day I was at my job, and I was doing something. I just felt this heavy anchor just just go down in my chest, like boom. And I was like, dang, I don't feel happy like doing this. I don't feel like the call, like this is what I want to do. And I always remembered like my friends who studied culinary at the time, they were happy, they were excited to be in the kitchen. I tried to mimic that, and I felt like I wasn't finding my own niche, and that made me really sad. And then like all of a sudden, as I'm going through these emotions, I just think like to myself, when was I most happy? Or when was I happiest? I guess when I found myself like most joyful. And it was when I was like doing like youth ministry. I did a lot of youth ministry. I did a lot of treats like tech and search and basic. And of course I was still an active altar server in the church, and I was very active in my home parish. And that's where I found the most joy. And I remember reflecting on that, and that's where I found so much peace and so much, consolation. And I'm just saying, like, is this just something to like, keep me at ease, or is this God trying to tell me something? And then I remember when Jay, now Father Jay, was at Minerid, and he was, just in the middle of his formation. I was telling him, and I shared him about, thinking about a call to the priesthood, he told me some words I will never forget up to this day. He said, Devereaux, when you have that gut feeling and you know it's time to say yes, you will know. And what I thought was like a string of emotions or just consolation, with deeper reflection, I realized it was God telling me, like, it's time. It's time for you to give me a try. And I was very nervous about it. I thought, I was like, Lord, if I go into this ministry, and this is a vocation, and try to, see if this call is real, what will my parents think? What will my friends think? Would they think I'm confused? They think I want to be a chef, or I want to be a priest. Like, what do you want to do with your life? And fun fact, I was only 21 at the time, or 22. I thought I was old enough and I should have my stuff together, as they say, and I didn't. And I thought, I should have everything together by now. And I just remember like being so confused, like not knowing what to do with my life. And I feel this call to the priesthood, but I'm so deeply immersed in this life of culinary. Like what do I do? And I remember I went to Father Clark and I was like in distress. I was like, I just don't know where to start. I don't know where to begin. What should I do? And he said, Devereaux, he's like, I was in the same place you were, discerning the call to the priesthood. And so I think what you need to do is I think you need to go back home to Cat Island for a while, maybe for a weekend, and just listen to the stillness on the coastline, on the beach, and just be present with the Holy Spirit and just listen to what he's telling you. And so I went home. It was November in 2015. I don't remember the exact dates. And I just remember writing down a whole list of things that I was so afraid of, telling my family and my friends that I feel the call to the priesthood. And a few of them I still remember up to this day was feeling neglected and having horrible labels that are on priests. And I just thought, these are the things that are holding me back and what I'm so afraid of. And so I just went to the beach. I didn't really know how to enter into deep prayer at the time. I just, I spent a lot of time with the Blessed Sacrament and adoration. But I just never really knew, like, okay, how do I open myself up to the Holy Spirit and allow him to speak to me? And I just remember like burning these things that I wrote down in the fire pit that I made at the beach, and I burnt him. I said a little prayer and said a psalm. I just opened it up to whatever psalm I saw in the Bible, and I just remember that after I did that, like this calm just came over me. And I remember I went to my dad and I said, hey, we need to talk. And he was like, yeah, well, what we need to talk about? I was like, Daddy, I don't know if I want to do culinary arts anymore. It's like I don't feel that my heart is in this. I really want to be a priest, and I want to go into seminary. And there was this long pause. It was like 5 seconds, but it felt like 5 minutes. And he said, well, son, he said, you need to make up your mind. I was like, oh, Lord, here we go. This is exactly what I was expecting. And then he said, well, I tell you what, if this is where you feel the master's calling you, you need to go where he's calling you. This is where your heart is, you must go. And I was like what? What did you just say? And he was like, yeah, this is what you need to do. And I was like, okay, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. And so since I was still home at the time, I called, my mom was in there, so I called her. My mom lives here in Nassau, and I called her. I was like, Mom, we need to talk. And she was like, because she started talking about Johnson Wales and all this, and I was just like, because she was trying to get scholarships. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not where I'm going. How do I say this to her? And I was like, Mom, I'm not going to Johnson Wales anymore. I want to go into seminary. And I was like muttering all of this underneath my breath. I'm just like, you need to speak up. I can't hear what you're saying. I was like, I am going to Johnson Wales. I'm not going to Johnson Wales anymore. I'm applying to the seminary. And I felt like I was rowing my mommy because I was so scared. I screamed it out on the phone. And there was this another long silence for like another 5 seconds, but it felt like 5 minutes. And she was like, well, okay, this isn't a surprise. You were thinking about this for a while, so this ain't, too shocking. I was like, oh, okay, good. I was like, all right, this is good. Like I could work with this. My family is on board with me. This is great. And I told my older sister, she's not Catholic, but I told her. And as a matter of fact, I didn't tell her. I wasn't going to plan to tell her anything. And someone else told her, and she was like, well, Devereaux, when you was going to tell me you was going into the priesthood. And I was like, oh, I wasn't going to tell you anything because I know, how you sort of feel about Catholicism and all of that. So I don't. She's like, stop. That don't. She's like, what you have, like your faith and mine have nothing to do with each other. I said, I want you to be happy, and I want you to have a joyful life, and you have to choose something that you feel called to. And she says, as a matter of fact, I think you make a great priest. And I was, as we say, I guess as young people, shooketh. I could not believe she said that. I didn't know what to think. I was like, oh my Lord. And God was kind of like, I told you so. You should just trust me. You just trust me. Why don't you just do that? And I told my best friends. They were like, they're not surprised. And I just remember, ever since I went back to Father Clark, and I told him, Father Clark, I told my parents, and I informed Father Glenn, vocations director. Like I told everyone, and it was a great. I felt like the floodgates just opened up, and like my whole life just was on this verge of just pure joy and just complete exuberation, if I may use that term. And like everything that I still remember my days in culinary arts. I still remember my days going to Aquinas, but like I felt like the minute I said yes, like that, like everything just changed for me. And ever since I've offered my life to God in this way, I have never been the same. And I can't, and I'd lie if I said, I want to go back to what I once did, or I feel like I have any doubts or regrets. I mean, there were moments I was like, oh, I don't know if this is for me. Like, it's pretty tough, especially my first initial stages when I went to college seminary in Miami. And I was really struggling with that. But, I spent 3 years in Miami at St. John Vianney College Seminary, and I met some amazing people there. I loved my class that I was with, and 3 of them, Michael, Philip, and Josh, who've been by my side since the first day I applied to seminary, and so many others. Like Daniel Scanlon, we're a priest around the same time, and then I had such a beautiful time with them in Florida and Miami. Those were my college seminary days where I studied philosophy, and it was just amazing. It was a place where I got to know myself better, a place where I got to know Jesus in a more intimate way. Things I thought I knew about myself, I didn't know, and it was a joyful struggle. I found myself being challenged by them in ways I've never been challenged before, being challenged by my formators at the time, and I came out of that place in 2019 just feeling totally different, like a different man, like a real Christian man. And it was hard to say goodbye to them because seminary formation takes 7 years, and I was just college seminary, and so I was sent to Indiana in St. Meinrad, and that was a really rough time for me. Those 4 years were like, let's just say when you live out in the countryside, you just see corn. That's a lot. That was my introduction to St. Meinrad, and it was so different from what I had with my friends in Florida. I didn't want to tell them goodbye, and having to reintroduce myself and start at square one was not something what I wanted to do, but this is what God wanted, and so I had to do it. But even though that came with even more struggles, I met even more beautiful people there. I met a really good friend of mine named Anthony Armbruster, who was he's an Indiana boy. They call themselves Hoosiers, And he was really good in helping me, find my way around Indiana, being able to, get a taste for the culture, learn the culture. And I had another really great friend of there, Tyler Huber, who was in my class, and he showed me, the ropes and of things like of Southern Indiana, and they were two of my buddies in Meinrad. Every time I think of Meinrad or Indiana, I always think of them. And the monks too, like during my time at St. Meinrad, just really helped me along the way. I always remember the rector saying, it's not easy for Bahamians here, but he said, like, you're gonna be okay though. And I always remember him telling me that. And I had, during my whole 7 years in the United States, I had two options. I said I could be closed-minded, or I could be open to what's before me. And of course I chose the latter. And so many doors opened up to me. I met so many beautiful families, visited so many wonderful parishes and so many beautiful people there, and just awesome priests who showed me, like, not like just like Father Clark, like there is joy in this ministry, and there is purpose and there is meaning, and there is so much that can be accomplished if you just be open and believe in the power of God and what He can do through you as His divine instrument. And so 7 years has now passed, and if someone were to ask me, do you regret choosing this life? And I would say, of course not, I don't regret this. Are you kidding me? This is the happiest I've ever been. So many people have come up to me and said, you don't have a girlfriend, you don't have a wife, you don't have any children. It's like, I'm aware of that. I wasn't born, in a baptismal font. Like I had a life, and I discerned these things. Like, yes, of course I know that. Like, I know, like, there was a sadness when I said no to that life, and I said yes, but there was a greater yes in saying this. And there are days when I felt lonely, or I felt I could use a companion, and I don't have that every day. But that loneliness has been and still is to this day an opportunity for me to enter something a lot of persons don't enter into, that the priest has, and that is to enter into that intimacy of celibacy with the Lord Jesus. And though sometimes it can be a struggle to do so, it takes work and it takes time, and it's a beautiful life. It's a beautiful gift, the gift of the priesthood, to live a celibate and chaste life. And I don't regret this for anything, because even though I don't have children of my own or wife of my own, I have a church, I have a family, the people of God, and they are my children, and they'll be my children until the day I die. And the intimacy that I have with them is an intimacy probably, another father can't have with them, especially when they're at their dying bed, or bringing their child to baptism for the first time, or bringing their kids for first communion, and hearing their confessions, one of the most powerful sacraments in the church, and most importantly, being able to confect the Eucharist and hold God Himself in my hand every single day. I wouldn't give that up for the world, and I know this is the life God has called me to, and I have no regrets of it, and I continue to look forward to many, many years of ministering to my people here in the Archdiocese of Nassau and beyond. So thank you for welcoming me. Thank you for having me here as your priest, and please continue to pray for me that I will draw closer and closer to God and to you, His people, every single day. Thank you.